Hello and welcome back to the Inside Java podcast, the podcast about everything Java, brought to you by the team at Oracle that builds Java. My name is Nicolai Parlog, and this episode of Ask the Architects is a conversation with Alex Buckley, the guardian of the JEP process. JEPs, JDK Enhancement Proposals, are OpenJDK's vehicle for documenting and communicating substantial changes of the Java language, its APIs, the runtime, but also the JDK project itself, for example when it comes to development processes. We discuss a JEP state machine and structure, the immense care that goes into writing them, and why they're so important for OpenJDK itself and the wider Java community. Alex provides a lot of great insights that are essential to really understanding Java's development. We recorded this conversation behind the scenes at JavaOne, and those of you watching in addition to listening, remember, we also publish all Inside Java podcasts on youtube.com/java, so those of you watching get to see a new angle of the livestream studio. But please forgive that I'm out of focus during the entire video, the danger of a wide aperture. The conversation also went into a lot of technical topics, which I took out in the interest of time. While I did my best to do this smoothly, you may notice the occasional cut. With all of that out of the way, enjoy the episode. So, Alex, I'm here to talk to you today about a process that governs behind the scenes a lot of how Java is evolving and that you are heavily involved with. So let's talk about that process and then maybe later about your involvement and what that looks like. Of course, talking about JEPs. So let's talk a little bit about JEPs.
I'm glad that's what you think we're talking about. That's what I think we're talking about, the JEP process. So a JEP is a JDK Enhancement Proposal.
Yeah.
A JDK Enhancement Proposal is the way, it's a document, it's the way that a feature proposal, typically for Java, is documented, tracked, evaluated, and ultimately delivered into a JDK feature release. We're releasing JDK 26 today. There are about 12 JEPs, 10 to 12 JEPs in JDK 26 covering a variety of features. People have got used to seeing when a JDK feature release happens, what are the JEPs? Let's see what they are. Oh, there's a JEP for a language change. There's a JEP for a new tool. There's a JEP for a change to a garbage collector. There's a JEP for something being removed from the JDK.
Yeah.
So these proposals are not just about additions, they're about removals and change and evolution and documenting why all of that is happening. The process, such as it is that writing one of these proposals, one of these JEPs, is just the start of getting your feature delivered in the JDK. We'll probably talk about that later. And so there is a state machine, basically, through which a JEP proceeds from its first drafting all the way through to its delivery in JDK NN. That is the process. That process is itself defined in a JEP. Yeah. It's either JEP 1 or JEP 2. We can check that. And the overall JDK release process, 6 months, a certain, there's ramp down 1, there's ramp down 2. There's a whole process around the process of delivering a JDK is itself JEP 3. Yeah.
Should we go along that that state machine, that life cycle that a JEP goes through? You said it started with draft, and ideally, but that's not necessarily the case, it ends with it's done, it's integrated, delivered. Yeah. So let's go through intermediate steps. So let's make up an example. Let's say I want a feature. Man, I would love if I have thought about this in advance. I would make up a feature that's really annoying to Brian. Okay. Oh yeah, I know what I want to have. I want to have this null safe member selection thing that just makes it all the more easier to spread null around my code base.
The Elvis operator.
Yeah, like, nah. The Elvis operator is like, usually the Elvis operator is used as, give me the first thing, unless it's null, then give me the second thing. What I mean is, invoke this method on this instance. Unless the instance is null, then do not call the method, because that will NPE. Just make the whole thing null, which in a not null-aware type system as Java's is today, it's just terrible because it just pushes Java more around. But I don't care about that. I want my pirate Elvis, which is what I personally call it, because there's one I, it's like one dot.
Yes.
Anyway, so I want it in there. So for some reason or another, I got this in my head, and I'm writing a JEP draft. And I know that, maybe you can explain that, me not being an OpenJDK has absolutely no chance to get the JEP anywhere. But let's say I would be an OpenJDK committer maybe.
Well, so let's set some groundwork first. So
let's do that.
So all language features that are delivered into the JDK have JEPs.
Yeah.
But all JEPs for language features just because there is a JEP for a language feature doesn't mean it goes into the JDK.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So the process of getting a language feature into Java for the rest of time, because once it's in, that's it. It's going to be explained to millions of people over the years. That is a serious business.
Yes.
And the JEPs that are published on OpenJDK.org serve as the roadmap, effectively, for what the language features are that are in flight. Some are just ideas, some are under active development, some are almost about to be delivered. And so you can look at that and you can see the roadmap and you can see the shape of the features that are actually, coming along.
Yeah.
Now, if there is a feature kind of coming out of left field, and remember, an awful lot of language proposals are already in the bug database. There is a 30-year-old bug database where essentially every idea that you would have is in there, and it's public. You can go bugs.openjdk.org. You can go searching for these things.
Yeah.
But those were just, you might say those were just ideas 20 years ago. Now, for sure we're going to write it up as a JEP. The first thing to say is understand that the world is bigger than yourself. And we often see this on the AmberDev.
Speak for yourself, Alex.
On the AmberDev mailing list, someone will come and propose an idea. They'll propose a language feature. A recent one that comes to mind is the ability to undeclare a local variable. To undeclare a local variable.
I don't even know what that means. Let's not go into technicalities. Let's stick to the JEP process.
It's all there. And so before the act of writing a JEP gets started, that's really just a formalization. That's the presentation you make at the end of the project, right? The act of deciding what the idea is, talking about it with colleagues. I always say, have you talked to a Java user group about this idea? And what was the feedback there? Very often, Java developers will sort of raise they'll see your idea and counter it with, but why do you need that? You could do this instead. I don't need to write it that way. I can just write a method myself that ... I don't need that feature. I can just refactor my code to avoid the problem you claim exists. So it's really interesting watching Java developers basically argue amongst themselves as to the sanity and sense of a language feature proposal, especially one that is what you might call sort of a standalone feature, a specific operator, a specific meaning, a specific keyword. And so when those ideas are sometimes brought to the AmberDev mailing list, that's for the Project Amber in OpenJDK, where most new Java language features for pattern matching and records and sealing come from, those ideas get critiqued very, very heavily. And I often think that the people proposing ideas really had no idea how critical their global colleagues, their fellow Java developers, were going to be, because there's no reason for anyone to hold back on a mailing list when criticizing an idea. Doesn't matter how beautifully it is written up, people will absolutely go to the heart of the idea immediately. And say, and call it all sorts of names. And I've never seen anyone prepared for that.
Okay.
So the archives are there. I encourage you to read the AmberDev list if you have your private Elvis operator. And you really have to think about the feature, not just in 360 degrees, but in 360,000 degrees, because it's something that is going to be part of one of the world's top programming languages for the next 50 years. That is orders of magnitude more than any single application development experience you might have where it would be convenient for a feature. So, but let's say...
Yeah, but because we do want to talk through the JEP process, let's say for some reason or another, we did this, right? So as you say, there's lots of deliberation and design going on before something becomes a JEP. We see that, for example, with something like the recent mails about carrier classes on the JDK mailing list, or some past, also things with Valhalla, where some past documents were published. This is our thought process, this is what the problem statement is, and this is what we're trying to solve, and this is some ideas. But we made it all past that, and now we're decently confident that we got a good idea of what the solution will look like.
You might have a prototype.
Ideally,
you have a prototype. If it's a language feature, let's see a prototype in Java C.
And so good idea. So we had the prototype, people looked at it, good enough. Let's try to formalize this now. So I sit down and I write a JEP draft, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, it might be helpful to think what is the very end result of this process is you've got a language feature in the Java platform completely standardized. There's a specification for it. There will be changes to the Java language specification, perhaps the JVM specification. Perhaps there are API specs that will need to change. For example, record classes in the Java language are accompanied by the Java lang record class in the class library. So that's the destination you're going to. The JEP is a way. It shows how you're going to get there. It lays the groundwork for all of that. It doesn't need to talk about the implementation decisions in the prototype, but it does need to talk about what the prototype is trying to show, what language feature ultimately this thing is at its core.
Yeah.
So that later on it'll be, picked apart and specified in great detail and maybe implemented by multiple implementers inside and outside of OpenJDK, all under the Java SE platform banner.
Yeah.
So the physical steps of writing a JEP are straightforward. You start with a draft. At some point, if it is if you consider it now worthy of inclusion in the JDK for the rest of time, you would submit it. It would be evaluated against all other submitted JEPs.
Yeah. So then it's out of my hand, right? Like I write the draft, and then the state transitions into it's now somebody else's task, and that would be people who are like, if it fits into the Amber bucket, somebody like Brian Getz will be involved, I assume. I know that for API JEPs, maybe somebody who's owning that space, like if it's collections, maybe by Stuart Marks. If it's security, might be Sean Mullen. So those people are, I assume, then involved in reviewing my draft.
Yes, I should say you have your draft. You need to have some reviewers on it, just like for code. I guess you could technically submit something with no reviewers, but you would be asked immediately, has anyone reviewed this? Yeah. The real step when a JEP comes alive is when it is officially deemed a candidate for inclusion in the JDK project. Yeah. And when a JEP is deemed a candidate, that's when it gets the 3-digit number.
Yeah, okay.
So until then, it's just a draft and it's on openjdk.org, but only when it is a candidate for inclusion sometime in a feature release in the future of the JDK will it be deemed a candidate. And work continues all the time on the design and the prototyping and the evangelism and the improvement and the refactoring existing code to use this new feature. Yeah. Whilst this is all happening, there is no gate the JEP is putting on. You do the work in parallel. After a JEP has become a candidate, and a sort of capital C candidate, the next step, which might be months later, might be years later, is to be proposed to target a particular JDK release.
So that would be back on me, right? So I feel like I have worked with that.
If you've done the work.
To make. So this work would now be, I had my prototype. So now for proposed to target, I assume it must be production ready, right? Like whatever changes in the VM that I hacked into to make my prototype work now need to be done properly, and the language specification changes to be written out. So like
that's right.
So basically, when I propose to target, I feel like I should be ready that somebody on the other side says yes, and boom, it's a feature. That's not how it works, but I should have done all that work. Yeah,
absolutely. You're pretty close. It's sort of a call and response. If you make the call of I propose to target this, the response will be the response you want is yes, targeted to JDK 31.
Yeah.
And then the clock is ticking for you to do the integration. Presumably, if it's targeting into JDK 31, we don't try and predict the future. The JDK release train is always running every 6 months. So if we've just had JDK, there is some sort of shimmer in some of the timelines when you switch from one JDK to another. But let's say JDK 29 is about to ship, and you propose to target, maybe you'll probably get 31 rather than 30.
Really, has it ever happened? Like I cannot remember ever having seen
more than one.
Yeah,
advance.
exactly. Yeah,
it's going to depend on the exact timing of when you propose to target, and there is discussion on the JDK dev list about these proposals to target a feature.
Yeah.
Sometimes there is very little discussion. Sometimes there is a lot of discussion. But if the answer is the decision is yes, this is to be targeted, it's essentially the next JDK release.
Yeah.
And then the work of integrating the implementation, which has very likely been in your own project's repository, the Amber repository, the Valhalla repository, etc. Integrating that into the mainline JDK repository happens.
Yeah.
And eventually you're done. The thing is stamped, delivered.
Yeah.
And you're in the feature release, and you're talked about at JavaOne 2032.
And don't make it sound so drawn out, Alex. You're not doing us any favors here. Good. Now we looked at this process, and by the way, for people interested in this, this is defined by a JEP draft, which we can discuss in a minute how to find those drafts. And there's like a cool little diagram that goes to there's like a diagonal that goes all throughout states, but it has a bunch more pointers that basically are off ramps, right? So these features at various stages can be. I could decide, well, that idea didn't work out, and I can withdraw it.
Yes.
And also somebody else can say no, that idea didn't work out.
Yeah.
And close it.
Yes. Essentially from any, you start in draft by default. You can go from draft to closed if you just give up on the thing. But yes, essentially and this is true of quite a lot of the kind of behind the scenes process that the JDK uses, for example, to manage the compatibility of changes to the language and APIs, which is a separate thing. You can always at any point basically withdraw.
Yeah.
And say, we're not doing this. We're going to go from, it was submitted, but actually we're going to withdraw it now.
Yeah.
Or it was targeted and then it was withdrawn.
Yeah.
And so obviously the process needs to allow for that to happen. It doesn't happen very often that a feature goes all the way through, because it's not just submitted, it's become a candidate for inclusion in the JDK for the rest of time and then withdrawn.
One other thing I want to ask is, I mentioned earlier on that if I submit a draft and I want it to become a candidate, that people who are experts in that area where I'm submitting this will look over this. But I know that there's some people, you among them, and also Mark Reinhold, for example, maybe not even for example, but you two specifically are involved, specifically Mark, on a larger level, where Mark will in the end try to keep all the things together, right? That's a huge amount of behind the scenes work, which is often not even reflected in the JEPs. My understanding is that he basically is involved to a degree in all of them.
Yep.
And he's named on, at the moment, I think, none of them.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So can you go into that behind the scenes work that you're doing, that Mark is doing there? And maybe other people that I missed?
Yes. I sometimes say I write very few JEPs, but I review almost all of them.
Yeah. And I can tell, by the way, because just broadly about all the Java features, which is funny because often the people from OpenJDK, sometimes sitting in my talk, I'm like, why are you here? Don't you know all this? And I forget that, no, they don't. They focus on their area, right? They're not reading broadly all JEPs because they don't necessarily have that time. But you do, and so you know about all the things.
There is so much going on in OpenJDK, both in the JDK project and in the feeder projects, Valhalla, Amber, Panama, Babylon. There is so much going on. Language features, VM features, new libraries, new tools, optimizations at every level. There is no engineer in the Java platform group who's aware of everything going on there until you start reading the JEPs, and then you see everything that's going on, and you can start to see sort of in the fifth dimension what the roadmap for Java is going to be. You can see some of it coming from Brian Getz and Amber. You can see some of it coming from Maurizio Gimenamore and Paul Sandoz in Valhalla, Panama, Babylon, Dan Smith. We often hear from people at conferences like this, at user groups. I met people, they say, I read all the JEPs. I read all of them. That's how I find out what's going on in Java. It's straight from the source. Now what happens is an engineer owns a feature. OpenJDK is, it's code first. This is not a requirements gathering or requirements driven process. The engineer conceives the feature, they do a prototype, they put it on the shelf for 5 years, they come back to it. And if they and their team lead and their architect feels this is going places, then the JEP process, they start the JEP process, they draft something up. Now, the components of a JEP, which are the same regardless of sort of feature area.
Yeah.
You've got to give.
Wait, I'm going to interrupt you. Let's talk about those.
Okay.
But let's talk about those later. I still want to get back to your work and Mark's work before we get to the content. Yeah.
So if you look at a JEP, it's got a motivation.
Yeah.
It's got a description. It's got some risks and assumptions. It's got some alternatives. You've done this. What else could you have done?
Yeah.
Getting a commitment from the engineer who owns a feature about what they are assuming to be true about maybe how people will use this and the alternatives that they looked into. And even at the highest level, why they are doing this in the first place, getting that commitment from people, extracting it from their own, the back of their brain, which people can try to do, but they need some help sometimes. So that's what I'm doing. I'm reviewing these JEPs. My Slack sometimes, every day just pops up with an engineer saying, hey, I heard you do JEPs. Can you look at this one? And I'm like, wow, I haven't spoken to that guy for 3 years.
Yeah.
But I'd sure like to know what he's doing. Let me have a look.
Yeah.
Oh, it's something in this area. I had no idea at the beginning of the day that was going on.
Yeah.
That the engineer and their manager and their team, maybe they've been talking about this for 3 years. And it's really interesting. I genuinely feel very honored to be able to see this first draft of what someone has been working on for 3 months, a year, 3 years, whatever. So I will often look at it, and what I'm essentially community as a service at that point. I'm representing the Java community.
Yeah.
Looking at this write-up, I'm not reading the code. I'm not trying it out. I'm not talking to the engineer directly. I'm just looking at what they think the motivation for their feature is and what their feature is.
Yeah.
And does it make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And I will go back to the engineer and say, I have some questions about this, and after you have answered those, I will have more questions about other things. There are no trivial features in Java. Even the act of adding a single method to a single public class in java.start involves so many design decisions and trade-offs. And if we do this, what paths are we foreclosing in the future? Yeah. And
I once talked to Stuart Marks about this. He said even the low-hanging fruits are connected, are held up in the tree with steel cables. They might be low-hanging, but that doesn't mean they're easy to pick.
Right. Even one of the features in JDK 26 is there is an HTTP client in Java since Java 11. It supports 1.1 and 2. In Java 26, it supports HTTP 3. So there is a somewhat conservative API. Yeah.
The audience knows all about that. We did a past Inside Java podcast with Daniel Jelinski and Daniel Fuchs. Yep. And I explained how I went into that trap of, it's just an enum value. I know there's some protocol behind that, but how hard can it be? And it turns out, super hard, so much work. Whole protocols had to be implemented. Yeah.
Right, because underneath HTTP 3 is quick over UDP.
Yeah.
And, is there going to be, so there's a standard HTTP 3 client API, great. Is there going to be a standard quick API?
Yes.
Now,
or rather, no.
Well, so the answer is no, but why? I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names are what and why and when and how and where and who. The most important one is why. Why have you done this? Why have you not done this? And so I really value the ability to sit virtually via Zoom with an engineer and say, I didn't know anything about your feature yesterday. Why did you make that decision? And sometimes there's a good answer, and that's easy to write down. Sometimes there is no answer, and then we better come up with one, because the second this JEP goes on Reddit or Hacker News, these are not difficult there are lots of questions, right? People will instantly ask exactly the same questions. Yeah. I'm just helping the engineer get ahead of that.
Yeah.
And commit to when you've got plenty of time and space. There is, what's the quote? There is no There is no time to think when all hell breaks loose, but there is plenty of time to prepare for it.
Okay. Oh, no, I like that one.
So the act of writing a JEP and reviewing someone's JEP is the plenty of time to prepare for it space.
Yeah.
I'm
Wait, are you saying that when it becomes a candidate, that's when hell breaks loose?
basically, yes.
Yeah. It's not just like we talked about Reddit Hacker News, but like they're just stand-ins for just generally the wider Java community, right? Like people on the mailing list, people at Java user groups, the Java champions, other Java experts, right? People who are experts in that space. Like it's always wild to me how whatever niche topic, niche in quotation marks maybe, you'd think if I make a video about that, people will be out there like being experts in that exact thing and having opinions on that exact thing. And if they are experts, good opinions for good reasons, and they can ask, as I said, like very pointed questions about all this. So yeah, I can see why that would feel like that once you published it, once candidate.
Right. We are addressing a community of millions of people.
Yeah.
Many of whom are hungry to see Java evolve and improve, and we write these things so you can read them on the bus.
Yeah.
Or whilst waiting for the bus. You can read them whilst taking a walk at lunchtime.
Yeah.
These JEPs are, I mean, there's all sorts of, grammar and editing and tone and stuff, but we are writing these for mid-level developers, not for juniors, not people who are still learning Java, but absolutely not for, senior Java experts with 20 years.
So I've been a huge fan of JEPs, of reading JEPs, because exactly what you described. Like I was absolutely not an expert. I still don't consider myself an expert into most of the topics that JEPs talk about, and yet they were approachable, they were understandable, and just reading them, I think, is very educational. Often because they also teach of why something is the way it is, right? Because when you come into the language now as somebody who has learned in last couple years, maybe last 5 or 10 years, meaning you have not been there for all of its history, then some things just are. But they might seem odd. And maybe they are odd, but it really helps understanding why they're odd. And like often a JEP that addresses some of this, the oddity, will say, okay, so this is the historical reason, this is why.
Yes.
And so I learn a lot about stuff. Sometimes I learn about things while they are going away. So I'm learning about a thing that, that's why it was that way. It's not that way anymore now.
Right.
But
I'm glad you mentioned things going away, because I just don't know what we would do without the JEP process and JEPs to prepare people for things going away.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
So
for good new features, there's always a Java doc, right? But how do you document that something is no longer the way it is?
Right. So, Java was famous for many years. Nothing's ever removed from Java, people would say.
Yeah.
And it's true in the language. There are some asterisks on this, but essentially nothing is ever removed. In the standard library, however, which grew like you wouldn't believe in the 90s and 2000s, there are concepts there are classes there that were thought to be doing a valuable job, frankly, 25 years ago. And now, with experience, the answer is not so much. There are better ways to do things.
Experience. Also, things change, right? The ecosystem changes, technology changes, like applets maybe. Like applets were not a mistake. Applets are just not applicable anymore.
Right. The fact that something was added 25 years ago absolutely doesn't make it a bad thing. It probably makes it a very good thing if it's still there.
Yeah.
But there are exceptions to that rule.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yes, JDK 26, for example, has a JEP remove the applet API. And that's coming on the heels of, was it disable, terminally deprecate the app? I mean, there's been a series of JEPs to prepare everyone for. It's not just that there is no applet viewer. It's not just that you shouldn't be using applets. They're gone. You can't. There's no concept anymore in java.star and javax.star. So yes, where the rubber really meets the road. For some of what we do is when we are removing a feature, explaining, the mechanics of removing the code from the repository are ultimately fairly straightforward. That's just work. Remove the code, remove the tests.
For those who didn't see it, for those of you just listening, there were like quotation marks around the just work, because the just work can be a lot of work. But from an organizational perspective, it's clear how to do that.
Right. The question is why? Why is this thing that is a part of standard Java and was, praised at JavaOne 2002, for example, why what's the thinking now? Why all of a sudden? Maybe it's all of a sudden, maybe it's not all of a sudden. Why is there a proposal to ultimately remove it? Maybe the removal takes a whole series of releases. And so expressing that is, I use the phrase where the rubber meets the road. That is really the sort of the prime directive for a JEP's clarity to explain there is this thing, and it did this, and it didn't do it that well, and it did this other thing which we didn't really want it to do, and one option we have is to take the thing away. There's so much going on in the Java world that the misconceptions just abound. A lot of people think that some misconsafe was removed in some way in Java 9, and that's why there's a compatibility problem moving from 8 to 9 or 8 to 11. Not true. Some misconsafe was in Java 9. It was exported. You could do reflection over it. In 11 and 17 and 21.
It's kind of funny, of all the things that 9 might trip you up, that's actually not one of them.
That's absolutely not the thing. Like I remember when we had the meeting, we are going to keep some misconsafe in, we're going to export it, we're going to open it, you can do everything you could out of the box, no command line flags, unsafe is there for those libraries because there was no alternative to unsafe in Java 9. Roll forwards to Java 22, the foreign function and memory API comes in as a standard JCP approved API, reliable, present for the next 50 years way of doing both on heap and off heap memory access. And if it's off heap, it's not, there's no bounds checking. So once that supported standard API is there, the need for an unsupported, originally internal API like something's unsafe goes away. Now you've got two APIs doing somewhat the same thing. One carefully developed and standardized over many years in OpenJDK Project Panama, and the other this legacy from 20 years earlier. It's not okay to keep both of them forever. One has to win. And so we now have a series of JEPs that talk about deprecating and disabling and eventually removing some misconsafe. Because there is a standard replacement, and we can say it's morally in like 96-point text. We're not removing it for fun. We're not removing it to break any library or any application built on top of a library. We're removing it because it was meant to be a stopgap. It has dangerous functionality that prevents all sorts of runtime optimizations. There is now a standard. It is brutally clear how to do off-heap memory access of an unsafe, in quotes, nature in standard Java, the foreign function of memory API, Java lang foreign. Any library using some misconsafe should be using FFM. That policy, how do you communicate that to people you don't know? The answer is through a JEP that very clearly says everything I just said. I'm not adding anything over to what the JEP says. So I often say when we had a new language feature, the only correct response in some sense is, what took you guys so long? Of course, this feature has been added. What took you guys so long? I often think when there's a JEP that speaks to the removal, deprecation, disabling, and then removal of something, people would say, what we want is for people to say, that makes sense. The number of people who will directly be inconvenienced by it is in the overall Java ecosystem a small number. Now, we absolutely meet people, they come to OpenJDK mailing lists, who say, this change you're making, this removal, sometimes a change in default, is extremely inconvenient to me. And ultimately, looking at OpenJDK as a whole and the Java ecosystem as a whole, we can't keep on doing things the old way for convenience, but also invest in new ways, reliable, standard supported ways. We can't drag the past along with us forever. We believe in compatibility, forward, backward, migration, platform, so many kinds of compatibility, source, binary. We believe in these compatibilities, but that doesn't mean that something from 30 years ago stays forever, because it precludes things for the next 50 years coming up. That is the kind of timescale that we look at. I often say there will be class files in 100 years. There will be class files running 100 years from now. No kidding.
Unfortunately, we will not be there to see how that bet panned out.
Maybe there'll be class files from Java 8. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, if there will be class files, there will probably also be class files from Java 8.
And so that is, I don't want to say geological time.
Yeah.
But that time frame for Java is now over 30 years old. I talk about features coming in for the next 50 years to put things on a footing where it makes sense for them to have that kind of lifespan. Like you really need you need a solid foundation for those features. And not for nothing, James Gosling, if you read some of his white papers from the 90s explaining the vision of the Java platform, not just the language, the whole runtime, they weren't called JEPs. But they were what every JEP aspires to be. Anyone can read what's it called? The Java programming language, or the Java programming environment, if I recall, is the name.
Okay.
This is from the mid-90s, and it explains a programming language that is object-oriented, concurrent, type-safe, platform-independent. And you read it, and even now you read this narrative and say, this sounds great. In the mid-90s, this would have it kick-started the whole Java revolution.
Yeah.
Before he moved the molecules in the hot Java browser and the audience gasped that the web was suddenly alive, before that, there were white papers explaining the Java programming ethos and the style of the runtime. And you can criticize some of the technical decisions now and some of the things that were left out that had to be added later. But those narrative arguments, they're so easily shared and communicable and easy to put out there. And so those are the footsteps we are following in. We have our specs as well, of course, but most people are never going to read the Java language specification. Even much of the Java doc is pretty complicated. You're just going to ask your favorite agent about, just give me an example of this.
I mean, I gotta say, reading specifically the IDE, reading Java doc, it's still faster. I'm not an AI curmudgeon, so what do I know? But I gotta tell you, when I call a method, just pressing the hotkey and popping up the Java doc and reading that, and then maybe going to the class. If I read the class Java doc, I often go instead to the website because it's a little bit easier to read, long texts. But I still see value in reading that stuff myself and trying to ingest it and commit it to memory and understanding instead of having something, to choose through that and spit out a solution that I believe in learning for being fast in the future versus getting a faster solution now. But anyway, that's beside the point. I want to, we need to slowly come to the end here, but there's two things that we still need to close on. And one of them is, we talked about your process, your role in the process now. You said you basically, or you described that part where you early on helping people get the JEPs out. Is it fair to say then that your at least deep and heavy involvement ends in the earlier phases? It ends when maybe, or at least it diminishes when it becomes a candidate or when it's targeted or something like that?
Yes, we tend to front load the work so that by the time a JEP is submitted to be a candidate, it's essentially in its final form. Yeah. Now, it will be possible to take a rough draft of a JEP that roughly describes a feature. Maybe it doesn't have examples in.
Yeah.
Not everything is fleshed out. There is no discussion of what are the risks of doing it this way. It will be possible to have that and to make that a candidate and say, oh, we'll fix it later. We haven't historically done that because I read it and I have 1,000 questions and let's answer them now.
I'm sure people love you for that.
Right. And Mark Reinhold will read it and do sort of a final a cleanup and
that also explains why they have a very common tone. They are different. It's not like they're all written with exactly the same voice, but they are very similar.
Mark is applying a common voice behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's actually, that also makes it. It took me a while to notice that.
Yes.
Because it's so natural. You read them all very, very, very similarly.
Where you have a technical narrative that's outlining a space and picking a solution, saying these are the right abstractions. Ideally, you absolutely want a common voice, tone. One thing we always do in JEPs is we always put in as many examples as we can, because when you're reading your Java doc to see how to call the method, what you really want are a bunch of examples, right? Yeah. You can read the paragraph that describes what the thing does, and the first argument is check, but what you really want is an example. And we actively write JEPs to have examples in that are copy pastable into JShell.
Okay.
And then you can just make it. We'll actually then say in the JEP, and if you change this to this other thing, then you'll see it work differently. So, for example, in the virtual threads JEP, in the description of it, there is a short snippet of code that creates a virtual thread executor. And it creates 10,000, it's 10_000 virtual threads. And you can copy, we made it very carefully, guaranteeing you can copy paste it into JShell, and you hit enter and you go, okay, that ran quickly because the threads didn't do very much. Change the 10,000, the JEP says, to 10 million.
Yeah.
It's an extra. And, okay, 10 million, okay, I'll go and do that. And the sense of an exploration that you're getting, like I can feel it.
Yeah.
And so people do 10 million, and the threads are not doing very much, so there's very little overhead, and it just runs. And so the JEP is part tutorial. It is the best tutorial that feature will ever have, in all likelihood. Notwithstanding the excellent JEP Cafe and other materials that developer relations puts out. And sometimes I watch Jose's videos, and I'm like, oh, did we do that? That's awesome.
Yeah.
So a JEP it's not a specification, though it sometimes creeps right up to being one. It's part tutorial, it's part user guide, it's part, in some places, reference manual.
It's really interesting, because initially I thought that JEPs is like an OpenJDK internal communication thing that just happens to be very readable to the outside world. But you make very, very clear that is not only not an accident, that's actually probably the wrong. From what you say, I would guess if you would have to choose whether JEPs are only read by OpenJDK or only read by the rest of the Java community, I now get the sense you'd probably pick the community.
Yes.
Because initially I thought no, it's just written in a way that it also helps us. Meaning like not somebody like me who's not an OpenJDK, but mainly it's internal. But you're saying no, it's mainly the other way. It's like it's a vector that goes to the outside from
a JEP is not a transfer of information from one OpenJDK contributor, author, whatever, to another. Yeah, it is a transfer of information from them to everybody.
Okay, so you said you're front loading a lot of the work in the JEP.
Yeah, and that is hard for some engineers to cope with, frankly. Yeah, that the story has to be, I don't want to say perfect, but as Mark Reinhold likes to say, the information is only new once. When there is a feature. And maybe it's been sitting around in draft for a few years, but the moment it gets that stamp of authority of this is now it's been submitted, it's now a candidate for Java, now the discussions start. And the funny thing is the discussions almost never stop.
So then, and Mark stays involved all the way into the end, right? So he's I think in the end, the final arbiter, right? Over all of these?
Yes, Mark is the lead of the JDK project in OpenJDK. The JDK project is the one that is chartered with producing the JDK. That is separate from the process of making a JDK distribution that is available from your favorite vendor. The task of producing the source code implementation of it's the implementation of the Java SE platform. That is the role of the JDK project. Mark is the lead of that project. There are many reviewers and committers, etc. And so when we say JDK Enhancement Proposal, the JDK in that refers to the JDK project.
Good.
And that is why Mark, as the lead of the JDK project, is being the arbiter for the features in that JDK project, which encompass the language and the VM and the libraries and everything.
Okay, so we said earlier that we're going to go over the structure. So let's briefly do that because all JEPs have the same structure, and so let's quickly go over those blocks from top to bottom.
There is a lexical order: summary, goals, non-goals, motivation, description, risks and assumptions, alternatives, future work, you can put testing in there if you want.
Yeah.
That is the lexical order. And when you read it, of course, that's the order you read it in. That's not the order you write it in.
Huh.
It's not the order you write it in. The order you write it in is motivation, description, risks, summary, goals.
Okay, wait. So you basically start with motivation, which is like somewhere in like the top third.
Yes.
And then you go down from there. You said motivation, description. So for those who haven't read like a million JEPs, so description basically describes the feature.
Yes.
With like examples and everything, but it heavily builds on the motivation. Like the motivation is often long, sometimes longer even, like if it has to be a lot of groundwork, right?
Yeah.
It uses the same terminology. It says, well, all the problems we just laid out, gladly we have a solution for you.
We assert this is the right solution.
Right. And so you say motivation, description, and then risks and assumptions.
Yep.
And then you said goals and summary, which are both at the top again.
You should.
Which is kind of funny, like because when I produce content, I after a while realized that it's also a good way to produce, to write or make videos or whatever else, to start in the heart of the matter that you understand and do that part, and then do the intro later, because the intro is actually often very challenging. It needs to, like in my world, it needs to like grab attention, it needs to like tell people what's coming. For you, the requirements are different, but I think the idea is the same. You can write them better when you better understand the rest.
Exactly.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, if someone wants to type in a summary of what their feature is, sure, words are cheap, that's fine.
Yeah.
It won't survive contact with the motivation, frankly. The motivation that says, dear users, Java developers, here is a problem that we think is worth solving. The act of writing that, and then the concise description of what you're actually doing, the new class you're adding, the new language feature you're adding, and how it relates very directly to the problem you laid out.
Yeah.
That's the heart of the JEP. It is true that a lot of people looking at these things, maybe in a presentation, they're just getting the summary of the thing. So the summary has a role to play. But you can't write a really good one until you've written everything else.
Yeah.
And that's kind of doubly true for the goals, because the goals of the JEP, I see a lot of JEPs where the summary says we're going to do X, and then the goal will be do X. It's like, no, the goals of the JEP are not to describe the feature. The summary can describe, we're going to have a feature in the Java language to do this, or we're going to have a feature in the garbage collector to do that. The goals are not the feature, but what the feature is trying to achieve. So, for example, suppose your JEP is adding some API to...
Maybe, what about my question mark? My pirate Elvis from earlier.
Okay.
What about that one?
Right.
So my summary would be...
The summary would be you're going to enhance the Java programming language with an operator.
Yeah.
You'd probably say operator or some mechanism or something that... And you describe
null safe member selection or whatever it's often
access
called,
members, right, and defaults to null, whatever it is. And
Yeah.
you've got a couple of sentences there. The goal of the JEP is not add an operator to do the thing we just said.
Yeah.
The goal of the JEP is to, I'm going to make this up now, reduce the prevalence or the likelihood. Actually, maybe the
goal would be reduce the number of null checks that needs to be done.
Okay,
Because the thing is, like, I need to, my user maybe is null. If the user is null, I cannot do the expression. So I would say avoid the propensity or reduce the propensity of null checks.
Right. Avoid the boilerplates. You don't even need to do by blah blah blah.
Oh, just
if your goal is, if you have observed that there are an awful lot of double equals null or not equals null checks in code, and it is obscuring the main business logic. Yeah. And your goal is to get rid of those. The way you'll get rid of it is you're going to introduce something new. But your goal is to get rid of the boilerplate of if not null checks.
Yeah.
That's an okay goal.
Oh, nice.
That's just the first one.
Oh, need more?
There should probably be 2 or 3 or 4. And it's difficult because someone who's reading this from the top, they've seen the summary, you're going to add something to the language and it's going to be an operator and maybe that's something people maybe are already forming ideas about. The goals are a place to catch people. Mm-hmm. And before they know anything about the problem, it's really very, very difficult. Before they know anything about the problem you're trying to solve, explain in kind of domain-specific ways what you're going to be doing. It's really quite tricky. So in your case, reduce the boilerplate of the null check. It's a rather basic goal, but it's pretty clear. presumably there would also then be something about all of those null checks that you were doing. You were having to do some kind of exception handling or error handling if the thing was null and you didn't want it to be. Maybe that doesn't need to be written so explicitly with your operator. And so another goal could be, you've already had a remove boilerplate one. Maybe somehow you're going to sort of centralize all the nulls in one place, right?
There's only one null.
Right. There might be more nulls in the program, but at least you only have to handle them in one place or something.
Yeah, I get you.
And then, in other words, you're sort of looking at the same goal or the same outcome really from different angles.
Okay.
And that's just the goals. Then there are the non-goals, which are even harder to write. We often use non-goals to as kind of frame conditions.
Yeah.
So if we're going to remove something or change something, we will often have a non-goal of it is not a goal to
Don't worry, calm down.
We are never going to do this. Or it is not a goal to make any changes of any kind to this other guy.
Yeah.
It is not a goal to deprecate the thing that looks a little bit like this. They're not always necessary, to be honest.
One important thing that we kind of skipped is the list of like the header, which has all the would look like it's like an issue tracker fields, right? And a very important one there to look out for is the state. We discussed the state earlier. It's listed there, and something that I see frequently people make as a mistake when reading JEPs. They read the text of the JEP, which is written as if the feature, like 468 records, withers for records.
Yes.
As an example for that, the text is written because it is a proposal, as if the text is always written as if the proposal is already adopted. It doesn't say it shall or we want to. It's just like, no, this is the thing now. And it says Java 23 will do XYZ, and people are like, wait, but why is it not in Java 23? I'm like, aha, but the state that we already discussed is actually not integrated.
It's not targeted,
It was still on candidate. So that's very important. The text describes what the person wants the thing to be. The header will, among other information, deliver whether that is actually the case. And so that's one thing there. There's always the authors, the reviewers, the Java version if it is already targeted or was proposed. So if it's targeted, all that good stuff is up there.
Well, and is it scope the Java SE platform?
Yeah.
Is it scope the JDK? So it might be an API or a tool that's in the JDK, but it's not part of the Java platform.
Yep.
Or is it implementation, which is to say it's completely under the covers. There might be no command line flags or system properties. It's not an API in any way. It's a re-implementation of something. That's the scope.
Yeah.
And then there's the type of the JEP. Most JEPs are feature JEPs, so they describe a new feature in the language, in the VM, something in the library, something in the tool, a new command line flag in the tool, in a tool. So that's most of them. There are also infrastructure JEPs that talk about, for example, we're going to move the source code of OpenJDK from Mercurial to GitHub.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of work, and there are trade-offs and design decisions there, and so that gets documented there.
It's also interesting because while you could argue, well, a language feature was also described by the JLS, or an API is also described by the Java doc, none of those documents talk about Mercurial versus Git. So there are certain things, as the ones you just brought up, which like if they're not being a JEP, we also said the same thing about removals, right? Some things must be, or not must be a JEP, but I'm saying like if there were no JEP vehicle, you needed something else to write these down, or otherwise there would just be like sudden changes.
That would not be good.
That would not be trackable, not be understandable. Yeah.
Right. And then there are process JEPs as well. There aren't many of those, but for example, JEP 12, which describes the regime of preview features.
Yep.
What is a preview feature? What can be a preview feature? What can't be a preview feature? What is the process for preview features? It's a whole kind of shadow development regime. Is described in a process JEP 12, preview features that then you will see many JEPs that are previewing a feature will then say in their summary, this is a preview language feature. And that means go and see JEP 12. And that will give you some sense as to what timeline it's on, what kind of changes you can expect. There shouldn't be many if it's already in preview.
Okay. Thank you very much, Alex, for taking the time and for going through all of that.
Thank you, Nicolai.
As I said earlier, I really appreciate the JEPs, and I'm happy to have spoken with the person who drives that, or like at least, I mean, not a lot of people are involved. I understand that the authors, the engineers you talked about, who will write a lot of that stuff, and then of course also Mark Reinhold. But I really feel that you're like a core,
Guardian.
like a guardian in the center. Is that an official role in OpenJDK? Is your role guardian of the JEP process, or is it something that you did?
This is for many years I was the specification lead for the Java language in the JVM.
Yeah.
So those documents, we used to publish them as books. They're available online every release. We have a new JLS and JVMS along with the API spec. Those narrative documents, which have no implementation detail in at all, but explain what the Java language is and with some examples why it is that way. And these documents run for decades, right? We are trying to bring that level of quality and clarity basically to every new feature.
Yeah.
And it can be expensive and it can be time consuming. The payoff is Java is known as an ecosystem, as a platform where everything is carefully reasoned about. And people don't tell us. We don't know when people are reading these things.
Yeah.
Right? But we know that.
Which is good because, one common way to learn that people are reading this would be, I don't understand this, I don't understand that, give me this, explain that. And the reason that, like, I know from reading JEPs, that's, in many, many cases, that's enough to make a presentation, to make a video about that. I do occasionally ask questions, but they're rare. Like, it's maybe, I don't know, 1 in 5 JEPs that need to, like, reach out to somebody, get a better, get some
We
detail.
iterate on these things all the time in response to people's questions on Reddit, to people's questions on an OpenJDK dev list. If people are asking, I want people to ask questions if something is unclear, but the moment it becomes obvious what the fix is, let's put it in the JEP so that no one else is asking the same question. That's why I say very often the ideal reaction to a JEP, to a feature described in a JEP, is not, hang on, but how would that work? It's, oh, sounds great. When can I have this?
Why did it take you so long?
What took you guys so long?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Alex.
Thank
It was
you,
a pleasure
Nicolai.
having you.
Very good.